Hi there, Squid Schoolers. Jem here. And today we're going to be doing a pilot for something that I think we might well make a series out of, make kind of a regular thing. And I'm going to call it Map Mode of the Day. Map Mode of the Day is going to be a section where I make a short video explaining my thoughts on how to approach a given map mode combination. So today we're going to be focusing on Goby Arena Clam Blitz. The way that I'm going to start on all of these is by drawing what I'm going to call the objective line. The objective line is the path that you're going to take to get to your opponent's goal. Now, this might not be the only path, and I know I've got a bunch of people who are thinking, okay, but can't you go over here? And can't you go all the way around over here? And yes, all of those things are true. But what the objective line is really going to show is which team has control of different parts of the map. If I'm pushing to the opponent's basket, I'm not going to just paint this area right here and try to funnel my entire team in through this way. That is not the primary way that your team is going to push in. The primary way they're going to push in is going to be in this direction. And anything that you're going to do off on the sides like this is going to be more of a flank route. So we need to be about here to be able to score, which means that we need to keep our opponents away from a radius around this point. So it's going to look something like this. This is what we need control of. So everything from here on over on the objective line needs to be under our control for us to very safely, as an entire team, be pushing the basket. If you're here on the objective line and you want to be here, one of the first things that you're going to need to do is clear away any opponents. If you've got an opponent here and an opponent here, you cannot safely advance along the objective line, because as you start pushing forward, these guys are going to shoot you. And yes, you might not advance in that exact direction, but even if you decide to go around this way, this person is still going to shoot you. This person is probably going to move over in this direction to shoot you. So you need, in order to be able to move forward to this point, for example, to clear everybody out of that position. And so that's what these arcs mean. These arcs indicate which team has control. And when you're pushing up, you kind of push up by first getting control of this, and then getting control of this, and then getting control of this. This line right here is your defensive zone. So if you are backed up this far, and this is all you have control over, I would say that you are on defense. If you are pushed up this far, I would say that you are currently in neutral. You're close to being able to score, but you're not there yet. If you're pushed up this far, now you have control of the enemy basket. And if we want to take it one step further and you want to get to the theoretical best possible position, we're talking about being pushed up about this far so that your opponents can't even drop out from spawn. At none of the locations that they have access to are they safe to just drop off of this ledge. They have to clear somebody out of here first. That gives the people behind you time to score on the basket. Let's talk about different weapon roles. If you're a Slayer Skirmisher type, your goal is to push your point forward on the objective line. It is your job to make enough space by going and clearing players out that you can start pushing this line forward. That's your entire role on the team. Just move your team forward on the objective line. Clear out the enemies from the areas where they can control these positions. So the skirmishers, remember, their job is to draw enemy aggro. So what a skirmisher might do, if you're trying to get control of the enemy hoop, is a skirmisher might put themselves hereabouts. So this is something like a brush, something like a CDS, and they make some noise, they fire some shots, they get some people's attention over here, and as soon as the opponents start to crush in on that, you have a Slayer come around the far right-hand side, where they have been sharking around right hoop, making sure that there's nobody over here, and they pinch the opponents between them and the skirmisher. I find as a short-range shooter, I really love sitting in these kinds of positions right here. If my opponents are not locking down the area around here, this is a great position to take because most people are going to, stand here with a long-ranged weapon. Most people are probably just going to think, well, let's just walk straight into mid. And so most of your teammates are probably going to be fighting over on this side of the map. But if you take a position right here and your opponents are looking this direction, this often gives you a really good off angle. So that's one of the positions that I personally really like to take. Another advantage of being under here is if you're playing something like Inkjet, which I highly recommend on this map, very strong, you can Inkjet up over the top and have shots on anybody in this general position right here. Another great way to control this area is with missiles. You can control this area pretty well with something like a Stingray or a Booyah Bomb, forcing them out of position. Bomb rushes up here are really threatening for something that's in this kind of defensive position. So if you've got something like an E-Leader or a Hydra or something like that that's moving back and forth in these kinds of positions, those are the sorts of specials you can use to dislodge them and make it safe, instead of being here, to be maybe pushed further up and start encroaching on their territory. If you're a backline weapon, like I said, these positions are really good, but also a position like this is great for locking down this part of the map. So this might give you some shots on somebody who's trying to encroach on your hoop. Finally, as a support, your job is to, once your frontliners have secured the position from enemy players, your job is to fill up what your team has already secured with paint. Just because your teammates have managed to push the opponents out of this radius for the time being doesn't mean that you, as a team, completely control this area yet. Because if you guys maybe used a special or two or got a pick or something, but then that advantage goes away, there's not enough stopping the opposing team from just pushing right back in and shoving you further back on the objective line, unless you've already filled up, you've already kind of cashed in on that map control by painting it. The paint will give you a number of advantages here. Number one, it'll give you special. Number two, it'll give your team movement. And number three is that when clams spawn on your color ink, you will see where they are. And so the more of the map you have painted, the higher the likelihood is that you and your team are going to be able to go and find more clams and keep the enemy basket open and maintain that scoring push. Because remember, when the opponents are on defense, they're only going to control about this much, even if they're successful on their defense. And so the longer you can keep this basket open, the longer you have access to all of this map here, the more of it you can paint, the more you can harvest it for clams, and the more of a solid scoring push you can have. And also, the higher a likelihood that you're going to be able to hold at this position and stay further forward on the objective line, even when it's not necessarily safe to be all the way right up to the basket anymore. If you can end a push and still be in control of maybe this much of the map because you painted so much of it, that's so huge. That stalls the enemy team for maybe like half of a respawn timer, and that gives your team a lot better of an opportunity to get into the basket the next time or prevent the opponents from winning a fight so hard that they can get right up to your basket on the next fight. If this arc drops, if you lose space in your defensive zone, then your opposing team is going to have a chance to score. You need to have control of your hoop because somebody can climb up this wall, they can jump across, and this location right here, which is then accessible to them, is a location that you can score a power clam from. And you can also score smaller clams from a little further back. And something that not a lot of people know is that you can stand on top of this hoop, you can jump off the hoop and score a single clam from that jump throw. So you don't actually necessarily need to get through this grate to score if the basket is open. You often need to stand at two different angles to hit this and this. There are very few positions defensively where you can defend against both of those two. So if nobody on your team is watching the area on the right, make sure that you go and do that. And if nobody on your team is watching this corridor in here, make sure that you do that. As a defensive player, one of your priorities is to get control of at least the top of the right hoop. And from there, then maybe you can get control of the right side of it so that people don't have access to it at all, and you start pushing yourself up, again, roughly along the curve of the objective line. Then, when you're on offense, having one player threatening on this side is always a really good idea, because this gives you access to a place you can score from, and they have to devote resources to watching this position and preventing someone from getting here. Because if you're right here, it's actually really hard to stand below the ledge, so to stand down here and shoot up and hit this person who's scoring on their basket. It's important to really threaten this side, even if, maybe the main scoring push is going to be going through here. Another very common option that you see for going a little bit counter to the objective line is to flank through this side. And this gives you a number of different options. This lets you climb up this wall and be over here. Usually if you get to this position, you're going to drop and shark around this area. Usually this is something that a short-range shooter, some kind of skirmisher weapon will try and do. So you see a lot of brushes attempting to get down here. You see a lot of Neo splashes try to get down in that position. Because from here, you have easy access to the enemy goal. But what you're also doing is cutting off any defenders from taking this position. And if they don't have this position, they can't defend from this push. And now your team effectively controls this arc right here instead of this arc. And so you're pushing them a little further back, making it a little bit easier and more efficient to score, and defending your team as they come in with power clams. So that's one thing you can do, try to control this area. Another thing you can do if you see that there's nobody coming from spawn, nobody's going to be watching you, maybe you see a backliner up here that has their back turned, is you can come up and go up this wall, or come up and go around here and take this top left location. And that will free that location up so that your teammates can come here. And it will also potentially give your teammates really annoying super jumps. And that extends your zone all the way out to here. That puts you into lockout position. So those are a couple of flank options that you can take. Now remember that flanks are always risky. Flanks are always disadvantageous. You're putting yourself out of position. You're putting yourself far away from the objective line where the rest of your teammates can be expected to go. And so if you're putting yourself there, know that you're going to be at a numbers disadvantage, and know that in this case in particular, you're going to be going up unpaintable turf uphill. Neither of those are advantageous to you. It's very easy for someone to pick you if they see you coming. So if you're going to go this way, you want to make sure you're not painting this very much, especially up into S+, where people are actually going to be checking the map and seeing that you're putting paint down. You're going to want to check up in this area to make sure that nobody who is in this zone is looking at you and shooting down at you before you go. And you want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on the enemy spawn timers so that somebody doesn't happen to appear right here, right as you're at your most vulnerable spot, and come down and try and splat you from that position. But if you're able to execute that and you're able to get into this position, this is really, really powerful. And this is really, really powerful. This gives you such full control of the enemy basket that this is a lockout position. And if you're able to hold this, the game is going to end pretty quickly as long as your teammates see what's going on, push in, and respond to it. Now, if you're doing this and the entire opposing team is up and fighting in mid, you might need to do a little bit more than just occupy this area. You might need to actually push in from behind them and get some picks to allow your teammates to advance forward on the objective line. Because if your teammates are only up to here, and you've got opponents in these kinds of positions, maybe something like this, you being in one of these two positions doesn't necessarily help them yet. You need to be able to leverage this position so that your teammates push in from here, you push in from here, and between the two of you, you sandwich your opponents and remove them from play. This map is very weird in that the basket is in a pretty cramped position. It's kind of difficult to get into it. one of the biggest barriers to approaching the basket is this grate right here. You cannot be walking and shooting as you go through this grate, and so this grate is a huge kill zone. One player standing right here who has lethal bombs or even just pretty decently long weapon range can shut down an entire team from walking through this grate if that entire team doesn't use specials to either push this guy out of position or defend the player who is trying to push forward in this direction. So if you find yourself on defense and your team is scrambled and you are at a numbers disadvantage, taking a position like here or even maybe here is really awesome for stopping people from going in the most obvious place that they can think to score from. Now, this area over here, remember that we do have that flank route to worry about. You want to watch this if you have a suspicion that someone is going to be there. You don't want to just sit in a position like this, waiting for someone to flank. Because if they don't flank, you're leaving your team in a 3v4 in this area right here. So you only want to watch this area if you maybe flick open your map and see that somebody's painting this. If on your way out you spot there is something your opponent's color down here, then you know that maybe they're going to be heading up in this direction. Look for enemy paint, look for evidence that the enemy is over there. Otherwise, you're better off probably taking a position either here defensively or here. On offense, one of the most important things you can do is get access to your opponent's hoop. Usually the neutral game, remember the neutral game is where you're in control of about this much. The neutral game is generally fought over these hoop positions, because if you look at where the hoops are relative to the basket, they are basically the start of your opponent's defensive zone. So something like this. Once you get past one of these lines, you have shifted from neutral to being on either offense or defense. So fighting over the hoops is really important. The hoops give you some important cover. That's an important area to clear out, and that's something that the team should primarily focus on controlling. In order to control the hoops, though, you're probably going to need to control the box in mid first. First, you control your own hoop, then you control the mid box, and then you control the enemy's hoop. And that's how you kind of progress forward along the objective line. So those are some good physical objectives to be thinking of. Thank you guys for watching my take on Goby Clam Blitz. Let me know if there's anything you would like me to add or subtract from this video format. This is, again, the first time that I've done this, so I don't know exactly what's going to be the most useful to you guys. Maybe you want this to be a little bit less comprehensive, so it's a little more digestible, or maybe there's something you want to add to the format. Maybe there's some more information you'd like to hear. I'm willing to adjust it either way. Just let me know in the comments what you guys think. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you found it helpful so that you can see more of them in the future. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.